If you've ever seen those retro comic book ads promising a pet that comes to life instantly in your home, then you've already brushed past one of the strangest success stories in the history of science toys: sea monkeys. Sea monkeys may sound like fictional aquarium creatures, but they're actually real animals with a fascinating and surprisingly unusual history. But what exactly are sea monkeys? Let's dive right into it, right here, on History of Simple Things. To understand what sea monkeys really are, we have to look past the branding and focus on the science. Sea monkeys are actually tiny crustaceans called artemia, better known as brine shrimp. These microscopic creatures naturally live in salty lakes and harsh environments where most animals can't survive, making them surprisingly tough little survivors. What makes brine shrimp so fascinating is their ability to enter a state called cryptobiosis. When conditions become too harsh, they shut down their metabolism and turn into dormant cysts that look like tiny grains of dust. They can survive like this for years, even decades, until they're placed back into the right saltwater conditions and suddenly come back to life. This biological trick is exactly what made sea monkeys possible. In the late 1950s, Harold von Braunhut saw potential in dormant brine shrimp eggs and realized they could be packaged and sold as an instant pet with the right instructions. Instead of using the scientific name brine shrimp, he rebranded them as sea monkeys, a more playful name meant to spark curiosity and imagination. The idea took off in the 1960s when sea monkeys were advertised in comic books. These ads were legendary because they didn't just sell a product, they sold a fantasy. Kids saw illustrations of smiling, humanoid underwater families living in castles and doing human-like activities. In reality, it was just microscopic shrimp in a small tank, but the gap between imagination and reality made it exciting as kids waited for their instant life to appear. When the package arrived, it usually included a small tank, salt mix, food, and the most important part, the dormant sea monkey eggs. The instructions were very specific. You couldn't just add everything to water and expect results. The salt had to be mixed at the right concentration to mimic their natural environment. Once the eggs were added, the waiting began, and that period of suspense was where the real excitement built up. At first, nothing seems to happen. The water may look empty or slightly cloudy, but within a day or two, tiny specks appear. These are newborn sea monkeys called novelty, almost invisible at first, but slowly moving when seen closely. For some, it can feel underwhelming if they expect something cartoon-like, but scientifically, it's a fascinating moment where dormant life becomes active again. As they grow, sea monkeys go through several stages of development. They start microscopic, then gradually develop into shrimp-like creatures with visible tails and small swimming appendages. They breathe through gills and feed on tiny particles like algae or the special food included in the kit. Their lifespan depends on water quality, oxygen, and temperature, but with proper care, they can live for several months. One reason sea monkeys became a cultural phenomenon is that they sit between a science experiment and a living pet. They're simple enough for children to care for, but still teach real biological concepts like ecosystems, life cycles, and dormancy. In classrooms, they're often used as an educational tool because students can observe life developing in real time without expensive equipment or setups. Beyond education, sea monkeys also carry an emotional nostalgia. Many people remember them not just as animals, but as a childhood experience, waiting by a tank, hoping to see movement, and feeling both excitement and confusion when reality didn't match the ads. That gap between expectation and reality is what made them so memorable. Scientifically, sea monkeys are important because they show how life can survive extreme conditions. Brine shrimp are studied for their ability to endure dehydration, radiation in cyst form, and changes in salinity. Their eggs are so durable they can be shipped worldwide without refrigeration, which is why the sea monkey business model still works today. Over time, the branding evolved. The exaggerated humanoid sea monkey illustrations were replaced with more realistic marketing, but the fascination never fully faded. Today, sea monkey kits are still sold online and in stores as novelty pets or STEM learning tools. What began as a comic book advertisement has become a lasting example of how science and marketing can combine to create something culturally enduring. In the end, sea monkeys aren't really about underwater kingdoms or imaginary creatures living human-like lives. They're about something more grounded and arguably more interesting: the hidden complexity of life itself. They show how organisms can pause, survive, and restart under the right conditions, turning invisible biology into something you can actually observe in a small tank on your desk. So the next time someone asks what sea monkeys are, the simple answer is brine shrimp. But the real answer is more layered than that. They are a living lesson in adaptation, a piece of science wrapped in nostalgia, and a reminder that even the smallest organisms can spark big curiosity. And maybe that's why, decades later, people still find themselves fascinated by a tiny packet of dust that turns into life when you add water. Thank you for watching. If you have suggestions for our next video, feel free to share them in the comments below. We'll be sure to give you an acknowledgement for your contribution. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the history of simple things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories woven through the smallest details.